Well, I was addicted to heroin, cocaine, and alcohol for 10 years. I started using when I was 16. Started with marijuana, but it quickly escalated to cocaine, alcohol, heroin by the time I was 18.
My guest today built a program around what causes someone to seek alcohol or substances rather than just managing addiction. This innovative treatment philosophy led him to pioneer one of the most recognized treatment models in the country. Pax Prentiss is the co-founder and CEO of Passages Malibu, co-author of the Alcoholism and Addiction Cure, and has helped more than 40,000 people get sober. Today, we're talking about what actually causes addiction and what real recovery looks like. This is a great conversation, folks. And hey, don't forget to please click subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. And then also share this with someone. Look, if you know someone that is struggling with addiction, or you yourself, you might have some addiction, then by all means, share this and then take note. And also, you'll have all the contact information that if you want to reach out to Pax directly, you can do that to ask questions, do a consultation, and maybe take advantage of Passage's incredible recovery program. With that, thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
Pax, I am so honored to have you today, man. How are you?
Jason, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a privilege. And we're going to be talking today about something that I think even if it hasn't affected the individual listening to this personally, I guarantee they know someone that has dealt with addiction and that journey and what that means. And it's kind of surreal. I got to tell you, like before we started recording, I've only seen you on my television talking about
Mhm.
Passages Malibu for
Yes.
years, and so I was so excited to have this conversation because I've had people in my life that have dealt with addiction, both from a substance abuse to and other things as well. And so I'm just curious. I'm coming into this curious because I would like to better understand how just I, on a personal level, can help individuals. But man, your story is pretty remarkable. And so I would like to just start there about, and I guarantee I'm not the only one, by the way, that has seen you on the commercials. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
wow, the guy that's always sitting in front of this beautiful setting talking about passages is here. But your story to get there, I think, is one of the most critical pieces to your background. So talk about your own personal origin story that led to your dad and you taking on what has now become probably the foremost treatment center in the world. Maybe, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think everybody here knows two: Betty Ford and Passages. I know if I had
Yeah.
to name two on a talk on
Right.
a game show, those are the two I could name. So how did it all start, man?
Well, I was addicted to heroin, cocaine, and alcohol for 10 years.
Wow.
I started using when I was 16. Started with marijuana, but it quickly escalated to cocaine, alcohol, heroin by the time I was 18. And so that started a journey of going in and out of treatment centers, trying to find a solution. Would always relapse after treatment, go back to heroin. Um, and I was really struggling with trying to figure out what I was going to do in order to get off of the drug. And during that time, because I was so young, my dad was, also looking for solutions to getting me sober. But when I was going through treatment, the only type of programs that were really available were basically group meeting facilities that offer the 12 steps, which that type of treatment has been standardized since like 1936 when Alcoholics Anonymous was created. But I mean, everything up to that point, which is we're going back about 25 years now, was just you check into a treatment center, you sit in groups with other people, and uh, you basically get educated on how to manage your addiction. And you're told that you'll be an addict or an alcoholic for the rest of your life. And the best you can do is just try to manage it. So whenever I would get out of treatment, I would always relapse. And so my dad started asking me an interesting question, which is, why do you think you're using? And for the longest time, I would always tell him, well, it was because I like the way it makes me feel. Uh, and I had also been told that I have a disease and that I'm powerless over it. And so, I couldn't really give my dad any answers to why I was using beyond just that it would make me feel good. But he would always say that he thought there was some reason, some underlying condition that was making me use. And so I started spending a lot of time thinking about that. And I started to get in touch with some reasons to why I actually might have been using heroin, which was really my drug of choice at that time. And once I started to figure out that there could be an underlying condition, that's when I started doing this holistic one-on-one therapy. And that was what really turned the corner for me, was just doing individual therapy on the underlying conditions that were causing me to use. And that was just a total game changer for me. Um, and the more that I got in touch with why I was using, what was driving me to the heroin, the more I was able to really process those feelings and move forward into sobriety. And so that approach ended up being so effective for me that I wanted to open a treatment center to offer that to other people, which is how Passages came to be. So when Passages opened in 2001, we were the first holistic individualized treatment program. So clients who come there, they receive like 60 to 80 hours of one-on-one therapy. And there's a strong focus on treating the underlying conditions that are causing a person to use drugs or alcohol. Now, it's a huge shift from the traditional 12-step program where they say it's a disease and you're powerless, into Passages where we look at addiction more as a symptom of an underlying
Hmm.
issue. We don't look at addiction necessarily as the primary problem. So
Yeah.
when you start treating the underlying conditions, and some of the most common ones are like depression, anxiety, trauma, stress, low self-esteem, even chemical imbalances. When you start treating those underlying conditions, then it becomes much easier to stay sober.
I think that makes so much sense, and that's one of the things that I love about just what research I've done on the program is because, you know, the people that I've dealt with really close to me that have dealt with addiction. One happens to be I mentioned I have a brother that has dealt with
Mhm.
this for years, and I remember the last time he got out of jail, he and I sat down with my wife, and my wife who's got a heart bigger than Texas, she's like she wants to save everyone. And Pax, the thing that you mentioned, low self esteem. One of the things I noticed about my brother was that he didn't care enough about himself to really care about the destruction the addiction was doing to him. And I was like, I can tell him that I love him, I care about him. As a believer, I tell him, you're a child of God, you're perfectly and fearfully made. But until he buys that, nothing was going to stop him from using. And because he's like, well, why do I care? And to me that's scary. And so that's what I like about what I've learned about Passages, is that you do go to that root cause. Otherwise you're just kind of dealing with this willpower and things that
Right.
exhaust you. Now I do want to ask you, there's two questions I want to ask you. 'Cause, man, heroin, first of all, I mean, you and I are probably close to the same age, and I want to tell you one of the things that has is always stuck with me. All right, so do you remember Nancy Reagan's Just Say No program? I mean, that was like her deal, right? So I remember as a kid thinking, well, if they're making this big a deal about it, these big green dots everywhere that say just say no, I'm scared to death. I'm not, so there must be something really bad. So I'm not going to try any drugs. So that was one thing that for me, just my simple mind. Secondly, you and I, we grew up in the era of less than zero. I watched Robert Downey Jr. and his whole. I thought as an actor, a celebrity, we were going to lose Robert Downey Jr. I remember that when he was in tablets. And then you watch him in the movie, the Bertie Sinella story. You're like, oh my God. So for me, it always scared me. So and I know the addictive nature of heroin, and so I want to ask you, Pax, how were you not scared to death? Like to me, what if I were sitting down, and this does not come with judgment. This is literally just like, holy crap. and I want this to lead kind of into, as much as you're willing to share, of what some of those underlying causes might have been. Because what I see is like, you're a smart guy. You had to have known, holy crap, and whether you smoked it or shot it, I don't know. But this is not good for me. But you know what? Whatever I'm feeling is it is less than what I want to, that what might happen as a result of this. And you chose to do it to me. I that just scares me. How do you get to that point? And what were some of those underlying things that led to you saying, to hell with it?
Right.
I'm gonna try this. What
You
did that
know,
look like?
You know, nutrition is a huge part of the recovery process. And that's one of the things that Pax and I discuss in this interview is that it's not just about breaking the habit, breaking the addiction. It's about a holistic approach to your health. Recovery isn't only about removing harmful substances, it's about rebuilding your body. Years of addiction can leave people nutritionally depleted, sleeping poorly, and chronically inflamed. While every recovery plan should be personalized under medical supervision, supporting overall health with quality nutrition, restorative sleep, regular movement, and foundational nutrients can help create an environment where healing is possible. That's the philosophy behind Authentic Health. Lasting health starts by giving your body what it needs to function. You can learn more about the Authentic Health foundational stack to close those nutrition gaps and perform at your best by going to shopauthentic.health.com. And as a Jason Wright Show listener and a Healthy CEO listener, if you will just write in promo code Jason, you get 10% off your order. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
well, in the beginning, you don't really know that you're self-medicating an underlying condition. I started using heroin when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
Uh, and I started by smoking it. I later was shooting it. But in the beginning, it feels harmless. I grew up in Venice, California. There was a lot of
Mhm.
drugs around that neighborhood, and kids had it. And I just started smoking it. And I actually didn't really understand the addictive qualities of heroin or what happens after about a month of using it, which is your body becomes physically dependent on it. So if you stop
Mm.
using, you go into withdrawal. You get very sick. So,
Yeah.
the horror stories that maybe you've heard of people from going through heroin withdrawal, it's really intense and it makes it very hard to stop because you're so
Right.
sick. Um, but in the beginning, it just feels completely harmless. It has this really slippery way of kind of getting its claws in you. But uh, looking back as to why I was using it, it's pretty easy for me to put my finger on it, which is I didn't like school. I
Mm.
felt insecure, and I actually had a difficult time with learning.
Mm.
And my grades were very poor. And I grew up around my dad, who was incredibly intelligent. He was a philosopher. He wrote books on, Eastern philosophy and other self-help topics. He was an incredible speaker. And I felt like I was kind of living in this shadow of excellence. And so, because I wasn't excelling and I felt like I had some real insecurities around that, heroin was like a solution for me because when I used it, it made me feel really good and it made me feel confident and put all my worries behind me instead of in front of me. And so it was just this really, for me, it was a pleasant way of checking out. Now, of course, over time, it leads to really dire consequences. But in the beginning, you don't really feel that or see that coming. It's just a way to feel better but feel better from what? But for me, it was really around, I think, insecurity and just a lack of identity growing up as a young man, like wondering, what are you going to do in this world? What's your purpose? And growing up with a father figure who had an enormous purpose, it was just intimidating for me. Um,
Yeah.
but that for me, and,
That's
and and I think a lot of young people who get started into drugs are just trying to navigate life and figure out their place in the world. And drugs is such a nice way to for them to check out and even socialize with their friends and be a part of something. But
yeah.
then it leads to major health problems and major life problems and professional problems and personal problems. But in the beginning, I believe that most people who become dependent on whether it's heroin or another drug, it's an underlying condition that's driving that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and look, man, throughout this conversation, I hope it never comes across this way, but if I ever sound self-righteous or whatever throughout this conversation, please just forgive me. I don't mean to be. And the good news is, like, for me, I have always been so scared of addiction that I haven't dabbled or I haven't touched anything. So, but it's not, and I do say this. It's not because I have exercised some kind of willpower that I've said no or anything so many times. It's like it's probably my fear drove me. And I grew up with a biological mother who did a lot of drugs, and so I saw it firsthand. So it scared me. And then I had a dad that beat it into my head that, okay, if you don't end up like that, then you don't do that. So I had these very categorical judgments growing up. Now, and as a result, now what I see though, Pax, that I want your take on is there seems to be this softening towards what used to be some of those social stigmas I grew up with regarding substance usage and that could lead to abuse. That I like, I'm in New York quite a bit, and man, you can't go like 20 yards without smelling weed. It's like
Mhm.
everybody's, it's like, and I have daughters that are now adults, they're 25 and 26. As they when they were in college, though, so many of the kids were smoking weed. Now they would say that, look, like my daughter that went to CU Boulder, where these kids have pretty much anything they want whenever they want. She said, look, yeah, everybody was smoking weed. If somebody showed up with pills or something else, then they were kind of like weird. But that does happen. And it seems like there's more of this social acceptance. So that's one thing. How do you what's your opinion on the social acceptance of drug use? And then two, have you noticed, like I seem to be noticing that so many young people and even adults are trying to, as you mentioned, check out more than any time I've ever seen. It's like these folks just they need something. I don't care if it's porn, it's drugs or whatever. There's this escape from reality that so many people are looking for. How do you contend with that? And as a result of some of these things, are you seeing more people seek help from you
Yeah.
guys? Because I got to think that's a good landing
Yeah.
spot.
So one of the biggest issues with excessive marijuana use today is
Hmm.
that, especially with the younger generation, ages like 15 to 25, is it causes mental health disorders.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't know that about marijuana. They think it's harmless, it's recreational. In a lot of states, it's legal. But the reality is, I get parents calling me on a regular basis where their son or daughter started smoking marijuana, and then they developed a mental health issue, whether it was OCD, bipolar, depression, anxiety, even schizophrenia. And I think part of that is because the marijuana today has such a higher THC concentration versus what it
Mhm.
was 20 or 30 years ago. So, I mean, THC concentrations now are like in the 20 to 30% range, where before it was more like, 5 to 15. So
Mhm.
they're using as just a much more intensified version of marijuana, but it definitely triggers mental health issues in the younger generation. Now, not everybody's going to get that. I mean, some people just are able to use marijuana and not develop a mental health issue, but there's also a segment of the population when they'll use it and develop a mental health issue.
Yeah, and one of the things that frustrates me, one of the things, and I don't think he does it quite as much as he used to, but Joe Rogan almost made like smoking weed, like he would challenge anybody that said that was anti-smoking weed. And I don't mean to pick on Joe Rogan, but I'm just like that was kind of his thing. But my take on that is, you know, if you're Joe Rogan making, around 30 million a year or whatever, and all of a sudden it becomes a problem, you're probably going to end up at Passages in Malibu and you're going to figure out a way, even if it's not, or you're going to have some sort of personal help and because of the resources you have available that are going to get you the help you need. But a lot of these kids are in areas that if it does lead to something different, if it becomes the gateway into something stronger or more corrosive, they may not have just the I don't know, the environmental support around
Uh,
them to get that. So that's one of the things I think that is really striking to me is like if we keep making saying that it's okay, and it's the people that get addicted that don't have again. not just the financial resources, but maybe the social resources surrounding them to say, hey, you've got a problem and you need help.
Yeah.
Those are some
You
of the
know,
things that scare me.
yeah, it's interesting because marijuana used to be viewed as a gateway drug, which it is. I mean, it will
Hmm.
potentially, I mean, it was even for me. I started with marijuana and then cocaine and heroin. But the thing about marijuana is it by itself is that destructive today. So
Hmm.
regardless of whether it's a gateway drug or not, it's actually a very powerful drug that has in my opinion, very harmful consequences for the use. I mean, when you look at the young people who are smoking marijuana, if you're around them, um, they're not focused,
Yep.
they're not driven, they're not productive, and their energy levels are lower. And I mean, you'll hear that it helps me. You hear that all the time. Marijuana helps me. It makes me feel better. It helps me with anxiety. It allows me to study all these things. But when you really spend time with somebody who's a regular marijuana smoker, it's not helping them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially if you're sober and you're clear and you have like this mental clarity and you get around somebody who's like a regular marijuana user, you can see it instantly, the effect that it's having on them. So,
Yeah.
marijuana just by itself I think it's a terrible drug, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I really do. I mean, I know
yeah.
you'll hear like, cancer patients use it so they have a better
Yep.
appetite. And, maybe there's some medicinal uses for it that in specific cases. But overall, for me, I think marijuana is a terrible drug.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Now, one of the things I want to let's talk about passages, and I want you to take this wherever you want to. Obviously, the stories that I come like when I hear you growing up in Venice, being out on the West Coast, like I mentioned it earlier, I immediately think of Less Than Zero. I think of what that the Robert Downey Jr. character and his father's relationship. You and your dad had to have gone through something similar of something, if nothing else, just a concerned father and a son that was in trouble. Obviously, yours had a much happier ending than the Bret Easton Ellis story. Or I think about, have you seen the story Beautiful Boy, the movie Beautiful Boy, or read the
No,
book?
I've seen Less Than Zero, but I haven't seen Beautiful Boy.
Okay, man, you've got to see that. It was
Yeah.
actually written by the father of the son who became addicted to heroin. I think it was either heroin or meth. And Timothy Chalamet plays the boy. And I mean, my wife, we watched it one time and she said, I'll never watch that again. And if you didn't mention Beautiful Boy
Mm,
to Jimlin, I mean, she breaks down in tears. It's such a
okay.
but and it does have that they're able to find their way. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because I can't fathom how helpless the feeling must be for some of the parents that show up at your facility about and with their child that they're just saying,
Yeah.
Pax, please, please save my child. So kind of unpack what that looks like how do you and I gotta think, man, I don't know how you separate. Maybe you can tell me, like, I've coached and mentored people and I feel pressure for their success. I can't even fathom what you must feel when people walk through your doors.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How does that begin? And for somebody that out there that's listening to this that may have just stumbled upon it by divine intervention because they know that they have a child that's right there on the edge and they hear this and they're like their ear and they've stopped their car like
Yeah.
maybe there's some answers here. What do you say? How does that look?
So, when you treat the first thing you want to do is when you do realize there's an issue with your son or daughter, you want to get them into treatment quickly. And you want to be mindful of not falling into the enabler role because a lot of parents will do that where their kid lives at home, they house them, they feed them, they provide money, etc. So they're in one way, they're like providing a place and a way for them to continue doing what they're doing. And that piece of it needs to stop like immediately. So getting them into treatment, and then most importantly, finding out the underlying issues that are driving that person to use drugs or alcohol. That's the key to getting people sober. And that's something that's being missed at a lot of treatment centers because they're more group based and they're not so much focused on treating underlying conditions. In order to treat underlying conditions, you need to have an abundance of one on one therapy so that you can really tailor a program to a client's specific needs. But the parents have also been affected by the addiction, and so they need coaching as well. So what I'll do is I'll often refer them to like a family coach or sober coach that I work with, who will help educate the parents on how to basically work with their son or daughter moving forward. And that
Okay.
piece is really helpful because I do the treatment side, but then I need a professional to support the family, and then together we can usually bring about a successful outcome. And then oftentimes you need to bring the family in to do sessions with their child, or their young adult in this case. So we do family sessions to bring peace, communication, and health back to the family as a whole. But you got to have really clear guidelines on what life is going to look like after passages. So aftercare planning, where they're going to live, who they're going to see for support, what their therapy is going to look like. So it's really about putting all the pieces in place. But the first piece of it is once you realize there's an issue, you got to get them into treatment right away. And don't let
Yeah.
it go like years and years.
Yeah. So, and one of the things I want to ask you about too is like, what is it like? So let's say, I mean, we're just sticking with I want to go to some adult, examples as well too. But right now, the family and the child, I got to think that when in this, I guess this is what my next question kind of applies to either or. They go to a place like Passages where it's heaven on earth. It's beautiful. At least
Mhm.
I haven't been there, but for what I've seen, it is a
Yeah.
gorgeous place where, frankly, I probably would never want to leave. How difficult is it, and how do you prepare them to go from this isolated, beautiful setting where they're probably able to unpack a lot of things that they haven't discussed with anyone? I mean,
Right.
we talk about trauma and issues that if we're digging down to the core of that onion, how did they make that transition, and how long is the typical journey from walking through your doors to getting to a place where they're back into the
Right.
real world and functioning at a level that they didn't think that they might have never thought possible again? How does that all work?
Yeah, so most clients will stay 1 to 3 months at Passages, and in that time, they're gonna be getting 60 to 80 hours of one-on-one therapy
Wow.
with a medical, clinical, and holistic team. So we treat the whole person, body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
And, so once they finish treatment with us, they're going to feel very good. I mean, that's without question. They just go through this amazing healing journey. It's a life-changing experience. They talked about all the underlying conditions and problems and sensitive issues that they have. They've done all this incredible therapy. So by the end of the program, they feel great. And that by itself can be enough momentum for them to go home and be productive, whether that's to go back to school, go back to work, or what have you. Um, but the key to success does lie in aftercare as well. So,
Mhm.
like when they come to Passages, we do like a lot of the heavy lifting. Like we really treat these deep-seated underlying issues, but it's good for them to have ongoing support afterwards for like the first year. So I'm going to refer them to therapists or support groups that they can continue to see after treatment. But the parents, when we're talking about young adults here, the parents really need to be involved in what their role is going to be, uh, working with their kid. And oftentimes, I tell parents, you really need to remove, if they're going to be going back home, they need to remove alcohol from the house. A
Got it.
huge amount of adults drink alcohol on a regular basis. I mean, like I would say at least 50%.
Yeah.
And so when their son or daughter returns home, they need to be returning home to a healthy environment where there's no alcohol in the house. And the other thing, like kids learn addictive behavior from their parents. So if parents are drinking on a regular basis or smoking marijuana in the house, then it's more likely that their kid is going to fall uh, into that pattern as well. So I
Yeah.
really talk to parents about how they can live by example, how they can promote a healthy lifestyle, and so that that their kid has a better chance of staying sober.
So you bring up something that, like, if I were to say, okay, I told you why I haven't tried the drugs because I was scared of it. But I did drink alcohol. I grew up in a very drinking environment. I mean, from a very young age. I mean, that was kind of like my dad and I. That was our bond, was we would sit and drink into
Mhm.
adulthood. And about 8 years ago, whenever health and wellness, like I told you before we started recording, that health and wellness became the closest thing to a hobby that I have. I'm a pretty boring guy. I guess the only thing I really like to do for recreation is travel with my wife. Other than that, I'm working, doing podcasts, or something I feel productive. But one of the things that happened for me, Pax, and I'd like to tie this into how you've maintained not only sobriety, but also turned it into something pretty phenomenal. For me, I became kind of obsessed with feeling good, clarity of thought, and that's what led me down that path. It was like, one, I wanted to see if I could, because I did have alcoholism that was in my family. My grandfather, for all intents and purposes, was an alcoholic. My dad probably is. And so I was like, I'm so scared of addiction. I'm like, I gotta see if I can do this. And then also secondly, it was like, and I want to see what it's like to just optimize as much as I can my clarity of thought, health, slow the aging process, all these things. And so I have become obsessed with feeling good, like feeling healthy. I've made that switch to where that feeling feels so good that the thought of a hangover, man, that scares the crap out of me. So how have you done it to go through everything you did? Because to me, and honestly, I mean, I don't want to overstate it, Pax, but it's almost like as a Christian, whenever I talk to non-believers that are adults in particular, and they end up, coming to Christ, I'm like, it blows my mind. I mean, it's not me that did it. I think it's the Holy Spirit, but I'm still like, gosh, as an adult, with all the things that have filled your head,
Mhm.
you were able to make that choice. Someone who's gone down the path you've gone, and to be able to stay clean and sober, turn it into your life's work. I'm just like, I mean, I'm almost in awe. It's like a Herculean task as I
Mhm.
witness it. So how have you, and again, going back to Robert Downey Jr., I think the same thing of that guy. I'm like, I remember watching the courtroom deals, and if I ever had the opportunity to interview him, I would be like, man, you didn't just go from that, but you're like uber healthy. You're freaking Tony Stark now. It's like this, it's like something like so antithetical to where you were. That's where you are. How, brother, how in the hell have you
Yeah.
done that?
Yeah. Well, I talk about this a lot, but I really go back to you have to get at the root cause of why you're using and heal it. Uh, if you don't process the actual issues,
Mhm.
whether, it's depression, anxiety, trauma, dysfunctional family dynamics, low self-esteem, whatever that particular issue is, you have to work on it. And you have to work through it. You can't work around it. You can't bypass it. You have to face it head on and just make a commitment that I'm going to not run away from my problems. I'm not going to run away from my fears. I'm going to face them. I'm going to go through them. I'm going to process them because that's really where the key to success lies. And then, because oftentimes drugs and alcohol is an escape. People are
Mhm.
using it to get away from a feeling. Right?
Yeah.
So if you say, "Listen, I'm not going to take the escape route anymore, and I'm going to go through this, whatever it may be, however scary or difficult or challenging, I'm going to go through it." And whether that's with a treatment center or a therapist or your own self-help program that you create, whatever it is that you do to heal yourself is going to lead to success. And that's really it. You can't sidestep life. Life is like a it's like a character race, right? And so
Yeah.
the challenges that we face are what actually create us into who we're going to be and who we become and so forth. But if people are sidestepping those challenges and just saying, "Hey, I'm going to drink or smoke weed or, do heroin or fentanyl or whatever it is," then they're just choosing to numb themselves, which I did that for a
Yeah.
long time. So I come from a non-judgmental place for sure, because I was that
Yeah.
person. But everything changed for me when I just decided to go through it and heal it and process it. And I really believe that in order for someone to turn their life around, you have to do that, you know?
Do you think that sometimes do you see patients come to you guys and like they want to get better, but whenever they hear that okay, you're gonna have to go back to when your dad raped you. you're going to have to go back to when your husband beat the shit out of you or whatever the case may be. If they're like, I just can't get there. Do you feel like that's
Well, it's not
part of the
delivered in that
struggle?
messaging, right? So when
Yeah,
they check in, therapists, when you're working with a really good therapist, they're sensitive to the trauma, and you have to approach trauma very carefully, right?
sure.
So there's a way to gently go through those experiences. But, like at Passages, they're doing that multiple times today, a day in a protected environment. And
Got it.
versus like if somebody's at home and they're using drugs or alcohol and they're seeing a therapist once a week, that's not going to work. I mean, it's not a
Yeah,
bad idea to see a therapist, but when you're seeing a therapist once a week and you're still using substances, you're not really processing those feelings. So when
yeah,
you come into a treatment center like Passages and you're sober and you can feel and you have that mental clarity and you're doing multiple therapeutic sessions a day, every day, then the progress becomes very quick, and it becomes
yeah,
very effective and very complete. But it really, in my opinion, really requires like a concentrated, focused effort in a protected environment with no distractions and no drugs.
yeah,
And also they need to feel trust. They need to feel
yeah,
safe because you're talking about, and this just goes back to why I think group meetings like are not nearly as effective as one-on-one. I mean, imagine talking about a rape in front of a group of
yeah,
people where a therapist can only spend 5 or 10 minutes with you and you're in front of a group of strangers. You're in most cases not going to go there. So that's
yeah,
why you have to be in a protected, really safe therapeutic environment. But regardless of what the underlying conditions are, someone has to face it because it's like skeletons in the closet. And if you don't clean out that closet, it just leads to self-medication in ways that are
yeah,
unhealthy,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to get your take on something, and you may just say, Jason, I don't know, I haven't ever thought about it. That's perfectly fine too. But because you have to, I'm sure you study all sorts of tactical ways to help these folks. You hear a lot of talk now about ayahuasca, psilocybin, dealing with PTSD, dealing with trauma specifically as a way to, I suppose, the way I understand it. So I've had some people on the show to talk about the managed ayahuasca experiences or psilocybin microdoses to get to treating trauma as a way to kind of really quickly let the guard down, go to the trauma, face it, and that helps them kind of pull that root up. Now, again, for me, again, this is Jason Wright's opinion, and again, not sound self-righteous or anything like that. Please, and so anyone listening, I'm not judging. That's why I've had people on to talk about these treatments. Um, to me, it's like that again, that scares me. I don't want to have to
Mhm.
alter my mind to go there. I would rather go in kind of what you're describing, a coached one-on-one, let's just slowly kind of wade out into the water until we get to the problem and I can pull that root up and get rid of it. Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you or
Yeah.
anything and what's going
Well,
on
I
there?
think, everybody, what works for one person may not work for another. It depends on the individual.
Yeah.
Um, uh, However, if somebody goes and does like a psychedelic experience and they're not addicted to something, they just have maybe severe trauma, I'm not going to deny that they could potentially have a positive effect there. I mean, sure, it's happened. I don't recommend it personally because I'm more of a therapy, holistic, one-on-one treatment type of guy. But I'll tell you, after treating 40,000 people, that I have never once had somebody come into my facility and said they had a positive experience with those particular substances and were able to stay sober.
Yeah.
Um, and the one drug right now that's getting very popular and which I treat a lot is ketamine. So
Yep.
ketamine is like this drug that people are using to treat anxiety and depression. Some doctors are prescribing it. You can check into some clinics and get it, but I am seeing more and more people check into for ketamine addiction, and it has really harmful effects on the urinary tract and your bladder
Yep.
over prolonged use. If someone becomes addicted to ketamine, they're usually having very significant issues with their bladder. But it has a very high, it's a very addictive substance. And I actually personally don't think it's effective.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't seen anyone check into a ketamine clinic, go through 5 or 6 sessions for their depression and come out and say, "My depression went away and I feel great."
Yeah.
I have literally not seen it once.
Yeah, Pax, it's interesting you mentioned that because I have someone very close to our family that that is, for all intents and purposes, a ketamine addict. Started out as a way to treat anxiety, and has become a full blown addict. And it's a shame, and whenever, like, some of the signs that you may wanna talk about, what so for anyone listening, what the signs look like. I can tell you what I witnessed. It's just kind of a spacey, lot of sniffing, because I guess, one of the ways you ingest it is by a powder snorting,
It's
right?
a
Is what they're
spray.
doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's one of the
yeah.
ways, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can and it's so easy to tell, and this person's gone into the ER multiple times with upper GI and, bladder issues and gut issues. Thought it was her, gallbladder, maybe need to be removed, stuff like that. I've just said, "Well,
And and
you're
and
addicted to
and and
ketamine."
that's happening all over the country at an alarming rate. I think ketamine is actually a very dangerous drug. It's highly addictive. It
Yeah,
has a lot of negative consequences on your physical health, mental health, uh, and why it's become so popular and why it's legal is a bit of a head scratcher to me. Um, but it's the same thing with marijuana. It's legal and it's popular, and I also see a lot of problems with people who are using that particular drug.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, y- y- you know, I just don't advocate for people to use substances to try and treat their depression or their anxiety or
Right,
their
right.
trauma or whatever the issues may be. I really think that if you go through these with a clear head and you face them head on and you can do the therapeutic work or do the self work on yourself, whatever that entails, whatever feels right to you, that you can actually work through a lot of these issues. But just reaching for ketamine seems like it's such an it's too easy. I'll go into the clinic, I'll get a spray and my depression will go away. And that's basically what they're being told.
Yeah,
So I just haven't seen any success with it.
yeah.
And,
Alright, well, I certainly haven't seen success in this
yeah,
one anecdotal case I'm talking about, but that brings me to another question I think, again, anyone listening could benefit from. So, and coach me, because I'm literally this is
yeah,
both for the sake of the listener as well as myself. You've identified someone that is an addict. They're receptive to receive that message. This person I've talked to have sat down with them and didn't get up and run away whenever I said, "Hey, I think you've got a problem, and we want to try to help you, and whatever we need to do." How do you start to approach from you've got a problem? So I'm going to tell you again anecdotally what this experience has been like. Sat down with the individual, told them we've identified that you got a problem, but we're here to help. We're not judging. We love you and we want to help you. The person says, "Yep, you're probably right, maybe, and I'll think about it." And then all of a sudden, communication, we don't communicate as much and I have absolutely zero confidence that this person has actually gotten this under control. So, what's some advice you can give to getting that person? Like, again, I would love to have this person at your facility. I mean, 100%. How do I get them from that first conversation to, hey, there's worse places to
yeah,
go than freaking Malibu, California, and this is a
right,
place where you might actually be able to get some real
right.
help.
So if somebody's willing to go to treatment, then it's a very easy conversation because, hey, they want to get better. They're willing to
Yeah.
check in, right? And if the family is able to convince them of that, or if they're just, willing to come in, then it becomes a very easy process. But if somebody is not willing to go to treatment or is treatment resistant, I recommend working with an interventionist
Okay.
because the interventionist will organize the intervention.
Yeah.
And when done correctly, interventions are incredibly impactful and successful.
Okay.
So usually an interventionist will work with the family for a few days before the intervention actually takes place. And they'll have each member of the family like write a letter about what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're willing to support, and what the consequences are if the person does not accept to go to treatment. And so when the intervention takes place, usually each person will read their letter, and the interventionist will kind of organize and conduct the process. And then if the person agrees to go to treatment after that, then the interventionist will either drive them or fly them straight to the treatment center that day. But if
Okay.
the family
Okay.
can't get it, I mean, if the family's not able to get the person to go in, then they have to use an interventionist.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
kind it's interesting you say that because that's kind of what we decided is like, my wife asked me, "Okay, what's the next step with this person?" And I said, "Well, if they don't do what we're asking or whatever, then I think it has to be a full-blown intervention with the family or whatever." I did not know that to reach out to a professional because I just probably would have tried to
Oh,
do
yeah.
everything myself. So that's smart.
And I know a
I'm glad you told
very
me that.
good one. I mean, if anyone who listens to the show wants to call Passages, and I take admission calls.
Okay.
So I speak to people who are seeking help or who have a family member that needs help, but I can refer them to an interventionist who
Okay.
can help them. And the interventions are incredibly effective. I mean, when
Yeah.
done correctly, and the reason being is they really hit on the heartstrings of each person, and they're usually an emotional process, but they're so powerful that the person usually agrees to go into treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
have several people at Passages right now that were there through intervention, and they're doing fantastically well. They love the program. See, that's the thing. People don't realize how much better they're going to feel once they get into treatment. You know, they're caught up in the addiction, but once they get into Passages and they've been there 4 or 5 days, they start to feel so much better that they're just so happy they came.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it's all about just helping them to make the right decision is really what it is, you
Yeah.
know? And you have to use as much leverage as you can to get the person in.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about again, I mean, you've said several times, which and I like this word. It's a holistic approach to the recovery process. So, what does some of that look like? Because and why this lands so well with me, I had this thing a while back that I called the Vitruvian Project, where it was this never-ending self-improvement project that was, based on Da Vinci's drawing of Vitruvian Man, which certainly wasn't the first, but his idea was to try to draw the perfectly proportioned human being. He sketched it out. What would the perfectly proportioned human being look like? And then that's Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man that's on anatomy books and all this. So I thought, well,
Right.
how cool would that be to apply to my life? What would a Vitruvian Jason look like spiritually, nutritionally, health, emotionally, relationally, cognitively? And so that's whenever I basically started on this journey that led to the podcast and all these other things that a lot of people probably think I'm kind of crazy for pursuing. But I don't think you can be one dimensional if you've got just like this unbelievable ability to make money, but your relationships at home are terrible, or you're not doing it right. You may be able to control your addiction, but if you're doing something else, like you're working out so much that you're neglecting everything else, that's not it's just balance.
Mhm.
So kind of take us through tactically
Right.
what it looks like when someone goes to Passages to enhance their spiritual,
Yeah.
their wellness, all these components that
Right.
make us this total being.
Yeah. So, and I like what you said. You're always seeking to be the best version of yourself, which is
Exactly.
which is the authentic you. Right?
100%.
And so when somebody's using drugs and alcohol, they become like this shadow of who they really are,
Right.
right? They lose weight, they don't eat healthy, they don't sleep well, they, are staying up late doing drugs, or they're drinking a lot of alcohol and they're like consuming all the alcohol and the sugar that goes along with it. I mean, by the time people get to Passages, I mean, oftentimes they're in really rough physical shape as well as psychological. But um, the reason we treat the whole person is that you really want to focus on everything that makes you who you are,
Mm,
psychologically, physically, and spiritually. Right. And so if you just focus on the psychological piece and you don't bring in the physical or you don't bring in the spiritual, I mean, like this whole person concept really is about a complete makeover so that
yeah.
by the time somebody graduates, they're at the best version of themselves, or at least near it, or they're on
Hmm.
the road to becoming it. So, and the reason that's so important is, like when you go into most treatment centers, you're told that you're an addict, you're an alcoholic, you have a disease, you're powerless, and the best you can do is manage it. And so what I'm trying to do with people is I get away from the labels. I don't like to use define them as an addict or an alcoholic. I like them to be aligned with who they really are as a human being,
Yeah.
who God made them to be, right?
Yeah.
And get them out of the addict mentality. And so, um, when they check into Passages, I mean, I'll just tell you, the treatment team that's assigned to them consists of a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a marriage and family therapist, a hypnotherapist, a spiritual counselor, a chemical dependency counselor, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, a physical trainer, and an aftercare planner. And that whole team works with them one-on-one. And so each one of those people specialize in a different area, whether it's medical, clinical, or spiritual. The whole person is treated. And so our
Yeah.
goal is to really get them back to being their pure, best version, authentic self. And I think
Yeah.
anybody that's getting sober, whether they're going to another treatment center or they're just trying to do it on their own, the goal is to become who you are meant to be. Like, what's your purpose in this world? What is your ability? Who do you look like when
Hmm.
you're operating at a 10 or near a
Hmm.
10,
Hmm.
right? And so that's
Hmm.
really the goal, is this to find out, is to be your authentic you. And each person has
Yeah.
that inside of them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love
That's
that, man, because I think that that's the thing. You just nailed it. And that you're not, it's not like you're creating a new person. You're just shedding, I guess, what Jung would call the mask or whatever, yeah, whichever, you know, however you want to look at it, to actually come out as who you really are. And
right.
man, isn't it crazy, Pax, that just what a freaking challenge it is for human beings to just walk in this world as their true authentic self. I'm 51 now, and it probably took me till I was 40 to really start getting it.
Yeah.
And I'm still a work in progress, but to just be able to say, yep, this is who I am. And I'm okay with the warts and all. I'm going to try to fix the warts, but this is who I authentically am. And damn, man, it's a challenge just
And
to
it is,
um,
part of it for people who are successful and productive is just finding the time. We get
yeah.
consumed with our personal and professional lives, and it's hard to find time to go to the gym. It's hard
Yep.
to find time to meal prep and make sure all your meals are laid out for the day and that they're healthy. It's
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to get to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. There's all these stressors that are happening to us on a regular basis, which make it hard to really do the things that we know keep us at our best. But if you can just sustain, and I tell this to everybody, people who even don't have an addiction or a dependency, don't drink at all. Number one, stay away from alcohol, because alcohol is probably the most abused substance on the face of the planet. And
Yep.
even people that are drinking 3, 4 times a week, or they're just having a drink or two at dinner, it's too much. And if they just remove alcohol completely, just that piece, because alcohol, it even affects your REM sleep. You don't
Big
sleep
time.
as well. You're hitting yourself with extra calories. There's, even just occasional use is not good for you. But if you can just remove the alcohol, eat decent, get to the gym a few days a week, try to get to bed at a decent time. Like, just those things alone are so huge for health and just being your authentic self.
Yeah. No, I could not agree more. And it's, if people were to ask me, like, of all the things I do, the exercise, and I'm one of these guys, and it's none of it's a panacea, but yeah, I do the cold plunge, I do the sauna, I do all the things. But man, it's as simple as long walks, no alcohol, and trying to get good sleep.
Yeah,
Just those
that's it.
things that the fruit is so low hanging, and that's one of those. And alcohol's a funny one, man. I know this has been, I know I'm not the first to say this, but it's the one thing whenever you sit at a business dinner or something and you say, basically you're saying, no, thank you. I won't have a glass of poison tonight. That everyone else like, well, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with you? Oh, did you just leave Passages? Are you in recovery or something?
Mhm.
It's like, instead of just like, oh, you don't do that. And I know for me, and I don't know if you guys talk about this a lot, but for me, one of the things that's been really helpful is identity-based habits and saying, okay, I am a healthy person, therefore this is what a healthy person looks like. And if I'm to be my healthiest, the alcohol just didn't fit into that. And that's how people kind of not look at you. And I don't deal with it so much anymore. But again, coming up in a family where alcohol was so prevalent and it was a bond between myself and family members, it was tough for a while. I would show up and to my parents' house in particular, and my dad would almost offer me water as like a, I know you're not going to drink, so here, would you like some
Mhm,
water? And
mhm.
not just because I think you're thirsty. There was almost like a hidden message. So alcohol is one of those tricky ones, but man, whatever social pressures you get against
Yeah,
it, I am with you. I think it is
yeah.
absolutely worth it.
Well, you're describing the issue that a lot of kids are growing up with now, and I'm talking about they at 3, 4 years old, they pick up when their parents are drinking. You start to
Yeah.
learn very early, and these kids that grow up in a household where alcohol is a regular event, they have more likelihood of starting to drink in their teens than they
Yeah.
do. My daughter doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. Um, and she grew up in a household with me. There was never any alcohol. And it's
Good.
interesting because her friends who were around parents that were using drugs or alcohol on a regular basis, most of them started using drugs and alcohol at a very young age, 13,
Yeah.
14, 15 years old. And part of it, I think, is just learned behavior. It's like if my parents are going to do it, I'm going to do it. So,
Right.
I think, role modeling for our kids, not having any alcohol in the house, not even drinking alcohol on occasion, just living a totally sober lifestyle is one of the best things that we can do for our children. And also for ourselves, because
Yep.
that,
Yeah.
like if we keep the goal in mind that we want to be our authentic self, like our best version of us, and like always moving in that direction. Yeah, like it's kind of something we're chasing because we can't spend 2 hours in the gym every day. We can't fix perfect meals every day. Like, but at least you're moving in that direction and you're 80, 90% there, right?
Yep.
That's the key to it, you
I
know?
could not I could not agree more. I don't disagree with anything that you just said. And what's really frustrating to Pax is like talking about an alcohol-free house. That goes back to earlier on. I'd say the same thing goes there's so many middle-aged guys, like professionals, like us that you see
Yeah.
that smoke weed at night. It's like or gummies. I mean, oh my God, me, my wife,
Gummies, right.
she'll come in and tell me like, yeah, there was someone we own a retail business in Tyler, and there might be a
Right.
mom just just randomly come and go, yeah, and I'm not, I just had to take a gummy, whatever. And we're like,
Right.
what? What are you talking about?
Right.
And it's cliche at this point, all the moms that drink wine in the afternoon and the dads come home and have a few cocktails, and now you're throwing gummies into the mix. So what are the kids supposed to think? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just to your point, it's learned behavior.
Yeah. We live in a world of excess.
100%.
Excess food, excess stimulants, excess drugs, excess, mind altering substances.
Yeah.
And the further we can get away from that as a society, the better we're going to be overall. Um,
Yeah.
I definitely am not an advocate for the legalization of marijuana or ketamine or really any mind altering substance. I mean, I accept that it's there and people are doing it, and but uh, and in rare cases, maybe people have a medicinal effect from marijuana. I mean, I know people that are going through cancer who have a hard time eating say that it helps them. And I'm not going to say that that isn't a benefit, but I think on in large, marijuana is and alcohol are just two substances that are just damaging society in large.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad
Yeah,
that you're not watering it down. I mean, it's not coming
yeah,
from a place of judgment. I can already tell that about you, and that's why I
yeah,
wanted to say the same thing to me. But I'm glad you're there. I do think there are some lines in the sand that we have to draw with
yeah.
ourselves, and so I admire you for being willing to do that.
And I think it's also becoming more popular too, for
Yeah,
people to be sober. Actually, I'm
agree,
starting to see more and more
agree.
people that are like, "No, I don't drink. I don't like that."
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's really nice when you can go out to dinner with somebody and they're not drinking, you're not drinking, and you just feel good and you're enjoying the moment.
Yep.
You know, it's a nice place to be, you know, and you go to
It's the
bed and you
best.
feel balanced and you wake up clear, you have your energy.
Yeah.
It's a nice
Yeah.
place to
Oh,
be.
Pax, dude, one of the things I used to hate was whenever, and this is like was towards the end of my drinking. Not that I would just get, completely, lit up or anything, but I would start by the end of the night being so paranoid about a potential hangover. And then the next day I would wake up and I would replay every single conversation I had had the night before, thinking, did I say anything stupid? Did I say anything, rude or you don't have to do that. You feel great. I mean, Gimlin makes it to your point, creating the right environment. I'm so lucky my wife, she doesn't drink. So it makes it easy for me to not drink. So it's not all
Yeah,
just because I'm just
and
like
that's
this.
that's fantastic.
It
It
makes it
it
so much easier.
both people have to not drink. It's really
Yeah.
hard to be sober and be married to somebody who
Oh,
drinks. It's all
yeah.
because when you're sober, you don't want to smell it, you don't want to see the effects of it. So it really, if the other person's drinking, and you know, I tell the people at Passages that if you're getting sober, you've been drinking for 20 or 30 years, and you're married to somebody who drinks, the person who you're going home to has to get sober because
Yeah.
as harsh as it sounds, that marriage is going to have a really difficult time working out if you just got out of rehab and your partner's still drinking.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you cannot,
100%.
it's like you cannot be around it. I mean,
Yeah.
you get to the point where you can go out to dinner and see other people drinking and feel comfortable, but you don't want it to be in the house with you. S-
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. And even now, I mean, 25 years of being sober, I still will not have alcohol in my house ever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I went through that. I was like, I used the excuse for a while that, well, what if we have people that come over and they want to drink? And then I finally was like, no, this is stupid. Get rid of this crap. Just
Yeah.
we don't no, I don't want it anywhere in the house. And I'm hoping that someone that's listening to this today, they might be that that partner, the spouse that decided, hey, I'm never going to drink again. And the other part's like, well, that's fine for you, but I'm going to still have my couple of scotches
Hmm.
every night after work.
Hmm.
I hope they hear that and realize the challenge that they're presenting to the person that said, hey,
Yeah.
I just want to take control of our health. Let's do it for our children. And alcohol is one of those things, because it is so socially acceptable, that it's real easy to just kind of, it's not that big of a deal. But I hope that people take in this conversation that, yeah, but it can escalate into something, pretty catastrophic.
Hmm.
Not in all cases, but there's no, and this is what I've said before, man, is I have yet to find the study that says not drinking alcohol could potentially be detrimental
Right.
to my health. Haven't
Yeah.
found that one. I don't
Yeah.
care. All the couple of drinks a week or whatever
Right.
may be beneficial,
Right.
but there's always a
Yeah.
caveat. I've
Yeah.
never heard of any damage to my liver from not drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, and, you know, prolonged use of alcohol has a really negative consequences on the body.
100%. And the mind, your
Yeah,
cognitive health. Oh, dude, it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, and it
So,
also increases your chance of cancer, by the way, because alcohol is, you know, it has sugar,
yep.
and
Yep.
cancer cells feed off of sugar.
Yeah, for
So
sure. For
by not
sure.
drinking, you really increase your chances of long-term health, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's what
Yeah.
I love to hear about your program, because I'm literally right now, as I mentioned, I'm at the International Society for Nutritional Science. I'm at our
Hmm.
conference here right now. So understanding health and wellness, that it's not just enough to decide, I'm probably not going to do this, but it's like, okay, if you're not going to do this, replace it with healthy behaviors, healthy nutrition, these sorts of things. I mean, the healthier you are, and there is, all the studies show the longevity benefits of health span whenever you remove those things, which are, you're more likely to go exercise and stuff if you haven't had any alcohol the night before, or a couple of drinks, before dinner. You're never going to do that post meal walk if you probably had alcohol before.
The
It
gym
all
is
ties
gonna
together.
Yeah, the gym is gonna make you feel way better than a glass of alcohol would ever, you
Absolutely.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, healthy lifestyle, healthy mind, you know, live by example, achieve the authentic self, And, just I encourage everybody, if you're having a problem, just, you can call Passages. I take admission calls. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Well, that's what I want to talk about now, Pax. Just real quick before I let you go, man. Do they go to the website? I did see where I was looking through the website, and yeah, man, you take so many of the intake calls. So how do people
Mhm.
follow you, reach you? If there's someone that heard this and needs help, how do they get in touch
Yeah,
with you?
all they need to do is go on the website. The number's right there. They can call 310-589-2880 and ask for me directly.
Okay.
When I opened Passages, I started it with my dad. We started taking admission calls very early. I'm still taking admission calls. I help people get into treatment, whether it's at Passages or whatever if I need to help them find another solution. But I'm very passionate about helping people make that first step into treatment and also working with families. I love
Good.
to work with families who have somebody who's struggling. So,
Wonderful.
yeah, it's so rewarding to give life back to people. And the interesting thing is I have people at Passages right now who are products of interventions. They didn't want to go to treatment, and now they're there and they see how good they feel. They're just like, "I love this." So, I really just wanna, help people get their lives back. Yeah.
Terrific. And then
Yeah.
also one thing I want to note that I noticed on the website, you guys do take insurance. So a lot of folks listening to this, they're going to
Mhm.
think, "Oh my God, I could never afford that." But there are ways that they can that
Yeah.
it is in insurance will cover it. And
Yes. So I have 2 treatment centers, Passages Malibu and Passages Ventura. My Passages
okay,
Ventura location is in network with pretty much every insurance plan.
terrific.
So if somebody just has insurance and wants a holistic program of healing with individual therapy, they can go to the Passages Ventura location. If they go to Passages Malibu, insurance will help, but they still have a little bit of an out of pocket because it's out of network. So
Okay,
there's 2 options there for them. But the goal is that whenever that phone rings, regardless of whether they have resources or no resources or insurance, I have an option for them. Okay.
fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Pax, this has been a blast, man. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for the time. And
Mm.
please, I always say on this show I'm the luckiest guy in the world because, as I mentioned before we started recording, my network has expounded exponentially as a result of it. I'm just not a transactional guy. For me, I'm much more relational. So please don't be a stranger to the show. I'd love to come out and shake your hand and have coffee and see you sometime in person. Like I said, now I've got a daughter on the West Coast, so I'll have a better excuse. But I
Anytime.
am truly grateful.
It would be nice to see you in person.
All right, very good.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll do a follow-up interview on the facility. I'd love to do that.
by all means.
Awesome. Sounds
That'd be
good.
great.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks a lot,
Back.
Jason. It was nice talking to you today.
Likewise, brother.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.
The content provided in this podcast, The Healthy CEO, is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Healthy CEO. Any information provided by our hosts or guests, including any physicians who may appear on the podcast, is solely for informational purposes and does not create any doctor-patient relationship. Listeners are advised to consult with their healthcare providers before making any changes to their health routines. The Healthy CEO and its affiliates assume no responsibility or liability for any consequence resulting directly or indirectly from any action or inaction you take based on the information provided in this podcast.